Hi everybody, today is Saturday, April 4th, 2026, and our dear friend, our brother, Pastor Henningsen is here with us. Talk about
I'm good, Nima. Nima, your audio, just your audio is a little bit sloshy.
Yeah, let me just check it
That's
out
better.
here.
That's
It's
better.
okay?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. And let me start. Please follow Patrick on 21st Century Wire. You can go to his Substack, Patrick Henningsen. All the links are in the description of this video. You can access that. You can go and follow what Patrick. He's doing an amazing job, informing us, letting us in a lot of information you can find there. And Patrick, let me start with the latest ultimatum of Donald Trump. He's talking about 48 hours before the hell coming. You know, he's trying to intimidate Iranians in. We had this before, 48 hours before, then 5 days, then 10 days. Right now, we're back to 48 hours. What has happened yesterday, I think it was basically different from what we've seen so far in this war, with fighter jets, with helicopters. And then the day before, we had more than 12 generals being, dismissed from their position, or they were forced to resign under the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. How do you find the situation right now? Let's just start with this 48 ultimatum. What does it mean in your opinion?
Well, I think we can draw the logical conclusion of the timing of this purge of military generals by the Secretary of War Crimes, or sorry, Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. It's pretty obvious the timing. It probably has to do with the pushback from these generals about a ground invasion or putting U.S. troops on the ground, and also one of these generals was also previously in command of the 82nd Airborne, the very division which is said to be deployed for combat operations on the ground in Iran. So that's clear what's going on. There's pushback within the military. There's no consensus in the U.S. military that this is a good idea. That this war, full stop, should be continue to be prosecuted in the kind of ad hoc, ramshackle, sort of make it up as you go along style that the Pete Hegseth and the Trump administration are attempting to do. So they're trying to rewrite the rule book of military engagement because they believe that they've arrived on the scene, and in 14 months that this is the beginning of history for them. But this is what happens when you put someone who's not qualified. No, probably Pete Hegseth's not really even qualified to lead a battalion in the U.S. military based on his low rank and the fact he was kicked out of the D.C. National Guard. I mean, he would have never, he wouldn't even get a position within the U.S. military of any even average rank. But yet he's been put in charge of the Pentagon at this very crucial time. So that's probably why they're probably doubling down, because this is a political war now. For Donald Trump, it's a political war in the U.S. and also legitimacy within the U.S., but also legitimacy internationally. He has staked everything on all these different, initiatives and economic wars and military wars, like the tariff war, for instance. His entire reputation for all of his tariff warfare rests on this military operation, as well as his claim to be the president for the economy, because he's supposedly a successful businessman. As we can see, the results economically, at least for average Americans, are going to be really, really difficult in terms of the inflationary pressure from the spike of oil and the throttling of supplies to the global market out of the Persian Gulf, and the effect that's having on oil markets and just economic activity right across the board. So there's all of that going on now. So I think the timing is very bad for the U.S., but it's a lose lose, really. If they pull out, then Trump's humiliated. The U.S. is humiliated. The Fox News crowd is humiliated, and they just can't accept that. If they stay in, they're going to incur more losses. What we saw in the last 24 hours or 48 hours in terms of lost aircraft is nothing. I mean, it's just the beginning. They put boots on the ground. You multiply that times 10 or 20. That's what's going to happen. There is no real feasible military operation, and even if there was, and we can talk about, the likely insertion points, and what the U.S. would pretend or hope to achieve, at least publicly, what trophy they can hold up after who knows how many days or weeks of combat operations inside of Iran. But the fact of the matter remains they don't really have any safe staging ground to mount operations. They don't have any fallback positions. They don't have really any protected supply lines or anything like that. They're banking on this idea that Iran's going to stand down and not do anything if they enter the country, and that Iran's just going to defer to the almighty great force of the U.S. military, and the U.S. will do massive bombing runs all over Iran while they invade. That's the military plan. It's that they're going to do saturation bombings, and whatever they have left in terms of standoff munitions, which is probably not much, and that's how they're going to provide cover for their military insertion. They're hoping that there's going to be absolutely no resistance from the Iranians, whether it's going to be an insertion on the southeast coast. That's my best guess. Not necessarily in the Persian Gulf. If anything, this was a probing, potentially, these are probing exercises around Kuwait, but that's not where the U.S. is, in my opinion, probably not likely to insert ground troops. If they do, it's probably going to be in another places, not even necessarily Karg Island per se. They may try, but it seems like the U.S. is better positioned to invade on the southeastern coast, and Chaurbah and the Konrak coast, the Makran coast line of Iran. It seems to be more of a sensible insertion point, and then they could utilize the CIA are arming and funding the Baluchi terrorist militias in Baluchistan, and trying to engineer a breakaway province there for many years. They would probably activate them, and hopefully they would join up with U.S. military positions. I mean, that would be the most logical plan from the United States point of view. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different aspects of this that we could go into, including what was revealed over the last 2 days, which is that there's many layers of air defense. It's not just S-400 style air defenses, large perimeters, and those types repelling those types of air attacks. Maybe the U.S. has taken out quite a few radar systems, and Israel has as well. But that doesn't mean that Iran doesn't have shorter range air defense, and that's going to come into play as they move closer in with helicopters and more aircraft to do glide bombs and bombing, because that's all that the U.S. can do right now. They have to move in closer, and they have to use things like glide bombs to hit targets because I believe they're running out of cruise missiles, and they're running out of standoff munitions. So that means that they're going to be in the firing line of sort of lighter, more decentralized and mobile air defenses, and even succumb to potential targeting from manpads and things like this. And I think we saw some of that in the last 24 hours. I mean, that's just pretty basic common sense. They're going to take aircraft losses. How much can they take? This is already a huge political problem in America, believe it or not. A few aircraft, this will potentially delay, if not derail, potentially the U.S. ground invasion. If enough political inertia is generated from the New York Times headlines of U.S. downed aircraft and missing pilots, that might be enough to deter this sort of reckless military operation by Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth and the others. So we'll see.
I think they have to send these forces to Iran, as you mentioned, in the southern part of Iran, basically in the southeast or southwest, or basically in the southern part of Iran. They have to send them using helicopters. I don't know how is that possible. Are they going to use these Arab states to to provide them with everything, going there and using their land and going into Iran. That would be hugely problematic, in my opinion, since as it happens, Iran would destroy everything in these countries, because that is something else. This is the new escalation in that. If the invasion happening, we had it before. The head of parliament in Iran said that. He said literally they're going to hit everything in these countries. And on the other hand, if they put them on the ground, let's assume 50,000. It's that the whole number that we've heard so far, we've seen so far, together with air power. I think we're gonna see a lot of these air fighter jets being hit by the air defense system. Not only because you mentioned the radars. The radars in Iran are mostly mobile. They're not fixed in a location, and they're moving around and then going to these underground cities and coming out and going and finding and sending the signals. This is the problem that the United States is dealing with, because with the targets that we've seen so far, they're somehow blind about where are these sort of radars, missiles, and the missile production. They don't know that. That's why they're hitting the bridges, the pharmaceutical facilities in Iran. I think that's one of the basic problems on the part of the United States. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I think there's always going to be problems logistically. There's also, the Iranians can fire at aircraft even using visual and other. There's visual and the combination of visual and infrared and heat seeking and all these other things. This is Nima. This is the exact reason why the Russian Federation has not used its air force over Ukraine in 4 years. Imagine that. You look at the size of Russia's Air Force, all fifth generation fighters, very advanced, the best pilots in the world, the best musicians in the world, the best, that have run the best targeted air campaigns, even in very tight logistical situations like in Aleppo, for instance. So Russia's well capable of running air campaigns, but they haven't in Ukraine. Why is that? Because of the risks. It's because of the risks, and America is going to face those same risks when they start moving in closer. They see what you have is the Trump administration. It's the currency for this presidency is memes. I'll tell you, it's memes, it's sound bites, headlines, it's tweets, and it's lies. And they've been lying about this military campaign to the American public and to the world. They've been talking like the U.S. has been loitering over Iranian cities with aircraft the whole time. It's not true. The majority of the attacks on Iran have been with long distance cruise missiles and other standoff munitions and targeting from submarines or from U.S. destroyers that are parked well in excess of 1,000, 200 odd kilometers away from the Iranian coast. So at a safe distance. And that's the majority. And then, of course, high altitude bombing, but only just. Now, because of the logistical problems with this, they'll have to move in closer in order to continue to quote hit targets and things like that. They're going to become more vulnerable to various targeting from various levels of air defense, various types of air defense. They've been able to avoid that thus far for the most part, and I think they've got overconfident, and now they've realized and this is why it's going to be a problem. This is going to be huge. This is a huge political crisis right now. I'm telling you, when this gets to the headlines of the New York Times, then everyone's talking about it, and everyone's then doubting Pete Hegseth, which they're doing now, and looking for different excuses or finding ways to remove him. And meanwhile, he's panicking and desperate because he has been given a do or die order from the Israeli lobby. You will prosecute this war, otherwise you're finished. So Pete Hegseth's career, his future, it totally hinges on his ability to have a normal life and stay out of prison. Really hinges on keeping this war going. In that sense, Pete Hegseth's become a type of Zelensky character. Sort of a clown sort of stage actor. Himself is a TV presenter. That's his main career, is TV presenting. Like President Trump is a reality TV actor, and whatever they think that they've carved out in the world of politics, they feel they have to double down. They have to keep this war going, like Zelensky, and they just want to keep it going indefinitely. This is suiting. We can talk about why this is suiting the U.S. empire. I think this is a strategy that the U.S. empire wants in Iran, in the Persian Gulf, as well as in Ukraine, because it's having a net effect on the global energy market that, at least in the short term, has provided tremendous amount of leverage for the United States. Russia has banned gasoline exports because of the damage to their refineries and their export facilities because of Ukrainian drone attacks. That's happening in the background of all this. So now the U.S. uses its proxy, which is Ukraine, to damage Russian export capacity, and successfully so. They've knocked it down 30, possibly 40% at the moment. Until it's repaired, that will be months. And Israel has knocked out Iranian capacity, and then in the retaliation, Iran has knocked out Gulf capacity. So between the U.S. and Israel, they have initiated the sort of downgrading, if you will, of the global oil and gas export market, and the direct beneficiary is U.S. oil and gas. Direct. They are the direct beneficiary. They have control over Venezuela's petroleum at the moment. They have also now knocked out a sufficient amount in the Persian Gulf and in Russia. So, it's absolutely a leveraged position for the United States empire, as it were. So that's the big picture. That leads me to believe they want to continue to drag this on as long as possible. And Israel and the U.S. are quite happy to degrade the Gulf. Quite happy. They think they can ride this out, and they can then create more leverage in maybe another conflict or another flashpoint or some other situation where they can increase their leverage. That's how they're thinking in Washington right now. They're stepping back, and
You mean the elites of the market. You mean the elites of the market. You're talking about those people, 1%, and those top people, not the ordinary people.
Yes, correct. It's bad for the American people. It means that we pay the inflation tax. We pay, and the Europeans are paying the inflation tax. It's bad for the people. It's bad for the economies of everybody except for the upper 1% or the 0.1%. So that is Donald Trump's base. Donald Trump has lost all. Many of the active duty military don't support Donald Trump. I know, because I've been on the ground interviewing them last 2 weeks. Okay, veterans. Many of the veterans have lost support. Donald Trump's lost their support. The MAGA base, they've peeled off. He's lost half of them. He's lost all of the independents, almost 100%. Almost 100% of independent votes. That was the swing vote for Trump in the last election, that he wouldn't have won without them. He got their vote because he lied, and he was acting like he was an anti-war president. It was a very good acting job by Donald Trump. And then, so what's left? Wall Street, Howard Lutnick's people, big oil, big gas in Texas, and big AI, big tech. And Wall Street. That's it. That's Trump and the media, most of the media, mainstream media class. That's it. There is no popular base anymore. It's finished. That's what people got to realize. It's a fraction of what it was during the 2024 election campaign. So time is not going to be kind for Trump politically, but do the Israelis really care what the Republicans do in the midterms? I don't think so. They've already set this story in motion, and Wall Street's happy. They're making money every time Trump sends out a tweet. They're all making. So is his inner circle. So are his children. So is his son-in-law. They're all making a fortune every time he posts on True Social because they'll put their call options in, watch the stock market go up, then they'll wait a few hours for Iran to say we're not negotiating anything with the U.S. What's this man talking about? And then all of a sudden the market drops and oil prices go back up. He and his people and his base, which are Wall Street and big AI and big military and big oil, they're making money on the dip as well as on the rebound and on the dip again. They're making money. The financial markets have been weaponized around oil trading and these commodities, so much so even there's a whole wing of cryptocurrency trading that we've exposed at 21stcenturywire.com. It's on our website right now. It's called Hormuz Hype. We've got a report breaking it down. They've gamed the price of petroleum in Europe. The European market should not be affected. They only get 7% of their oil from the Persian Gulf, Nima. 7%. The majority of European oil doesn't come from the Persian Gulf. That's just a talking point by the Trump administration. It comes from Norway. That's the majority of European oil. It comes from Norway in Europe.
Norway that goes to Poland, then
That's a gas pipeline as well.
yeah.
But then Kazakhstan and Nigeria and a little bit from Libya. That's the majority. That's the bulk. And the United States. That's the bulk of European oil at the moment. They're getting some from Russia, but less than before, obviously. So the main oil companies, the energy companies, are jacking up their price fixing to take advantage of the crisis to maximize profits. It's a big scandal right now in Europe. We're one of the few outlets that have put a great report together. I work with the French journalist Freddie Ponton, who's just done tremendous work on this topic and others. But that's a report on our website right now. The same is true in America, Nima. The United States, oil is priced globally, but it shouldn't, in terms of supply, it shouldn't affect the U.S. market at all. It shouldn't. So, but the big firms run a cartel, and they pretend to react to geopolitical events in order to maximize profits at the pump in real time, even though the downstream effects shouldn't come for months. As regards to the price of petrol or gasoline in the U.S. I mean, it's ridiculous. But they're doing it. They're doing it to game, and this is what's happened. And futures markets piling in now. The crypto trading is also pressurizing these betting markets, and again driving more volatility and also more profit. And so the markets, they're just moving. The capital's moving right now in the energy markets. That's where it is. They're taking advantage, and then when this crisis is over, Nima, they're going to move to another. The capital will then migrate to another bailout or whatever the Ponzi scheme is that the Federal Reserve be running to provide a rescue package for this disaster that Trump has gotten his own country and the world into. This is what these people do. They're absolute criminals. They're crooks, and they don't care. They don't care about the working class. The working class is getting destroyed right now, and the middle class, jobs, all these things are going to. So of course, this is going to hurt Trump, politically in the midterms. But the people that paid for this presidency are, unfortunately, the Israeli lobby. They don't care. They really don't care. They'll move on to work on a Democrat-led government. This is how it works. So until people wake up in America and realize how badly they've been played and will continue to be played along these lines, I don't think we just have to wait for the next crisis, really. That's kind of where it's at.
Yeah. Actually, we've learned from, it seems that Iran is buying the first, India makes first Iranian oil purchase in 7 years with no payment problems, because India is saying that they can no longer rely upon oil from Arab states due to blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. And we know that the price of oil has doubled at least since the war started. And I think, that's the reality that is changing somehow the mindset on the part of Europeans. We had the foreign minister of Austria talking with the foreign minister of Iran about how they can manage, the passage of tankers who are related to Austria, who they want to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Something is happening in that sense. Europeans, we had Macron the same way. Macron, by the way, the way that Macron is behaving is totally different from what we've seen in Ukraine, for example. He sees, the leverage in the Strait of Hormuz that Iran has. What is your understanding? What do you make of the way that Iran, the policy in the Strait of Hormuz, is somehow changing the nature of the relationship of those countries who need the strait to pass through?
Yeah, in terms of Emmanuel Macron inserting himself into this situation, I don't put a lot of currency in it. Also, because he's very inconsistent. He's done this with Russian relations. He's flip flopped, like literally days, weeks after. It's just that's actually his hallmark, is that he's a flip flopper. That's Macron, and a typical French political negotiation styles is to be engaged, to talk up.
100% agreeing with you. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
100% really engaged in it, talking up the great, it's going to be great, it's going to be wonderful, and then they will always back out at the end. Always. And this is just a French high level corporate style of negotiations, and then they will try to sort of do an end run around themselves with somebody else, possibly to get a better price. Who knows? But so I don't put, as far as Macron goes, that's how I view him. Is this type of he's what Macron's done is made himself relevant on the world stage by doing nothing, just by making a statement, and everyone's like, wow, that sounds very multipolar. Oh, he's the future. Finally, sane leadership from Europe. But he's really doing this for a domestic audience, because this war is hugely unpopular in France, and also among Muslims in France as well. And this has not gone unnoticed. So this is a president that is joined at the hip with Benjamin Netanyahu and has been totally supportive of the Gaza genocide. And France has done whatever Israel wants, pretty much. So this has also hurt him politically. His brand has been tarnished. So he doesn't want to make the same mistake here. You can see Europeans are not very, they're not pro-Trump. Even the right wing in Europe is going sour on Trump, just because of the crudeness, the sort of disgusting, kind of rude, sloppy, way that he goes about his political business, disrespectful to smaller countries, constantly, jibing European states, saying that they're not pulling their weight in NATO, which is ridiculous. NATO is just a big protection racket for the U.S. to sell weapons. They create the threat, and then they sell protection to the European countries and demand that they spend 3% on GDP to defend themselves. Defend themselves against what? Defend themselves against an aggressive Russia that only appears aggressive because the United States staged a violent coup in Kiev in February of 2014 that started a civil war that led to the war we have now. That's a U.S. total operation from beginning to end. And they'll turn to the Europeans and say, you got to buy more weapons because the Russians are dangerous. They want to invade. And most of Europeans will believe that. And you have, like, say, not very intelligent European leaders like Kalliakalis, like the new king of Finland, Mr. Stubbs, and of course Poland. Poland there's a faction in Poland always found it very profitable to talk up a Russian threat and to try to cultivate Russian hate from previous generations, from the Soviet era, the Warsaw Pact days.
We're talking about the Sikorsky ilk.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great career move. That's all American money. That's all American money injected into the Polish political system. And so if you have those views, it's very profitable. It's good for your career. You get on all the panels, you get the fellowships at the think tanks, you get to do your time in America, you get a nice cushy corporate banking job in New York or wherever they end up on the board of whichever company. That's the career trajectory in Poland. So that's just an example of how screwed up Europe is. They don't even know it's good for themselves. So they're looking at this situation in Iran, and now in Italy and Spain, the governments are coming under direct pressure from electorate about allowing their military bases, of which there are many U.S. military bases, under the guise of NATO. This is again part of the scam. The U.S. criticizes NATO like they're not pulling their weight. The U.S. uses NATO as a fig leaf to have military bases, hundreds of bases and facilities all over Europe. And then they use those as launching pads to launch illegal wars of aggression outside of NATO. That's what it is. So the Maloney and the government in Spain, in Italy and Spain, they're coming under pressure from their electorates on this. That people don't want to be part of this illegal war. They don't want to have the World War III blood on their hands if this thing spins out of control. And so, that in a way, a lot's being revealed. A lot is being revealed through Trump, through his kind of recklessness, and through the crazy bombast of the Pete Hegseths of the world. A lot's being revealed now. Is pushed relationships right to the edge, and Europeans especially have to basically look in the mirror and say, do we have any of these ethical or moral or international law considerations that we've been so pious and sanctimonious about over the Ukraine conflict? Does any of this apply in reality when it comes to the United States? That's why they're backing off. If they're engaged, they have to then deal with all of that hypocrisy. That means banning Russia from sporting events and the Olympics and sanctioning them, and kicking Russian people and businesses out of Europe and all this other stuff, based on this claim that Russia did a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, which it didn't. And even then, that was under the framework of the UN Security Council Resolution 2202 and the Minsk Accords. So Russia was merely intervening on a humanitarian basis, as was expected if the Minsk Accords and that UN Security Resolution collapsed, and it did. And the rest was fairly academic to anybody who was actually, watching and paying attention to the Ukraine civil war. But Europe remodeled all that, remarketed that as Russian aggression, and that created and that suited the U.S. Under the last administration under Joe Biden, and they used that to re-leverage U.S. positions in Europe and to try to destroy Russia economically and create this bifurcated global system, which has largely failed. And now here we go. Another front has opened up. Where are all these great platitudes now? Like, where are the speeches? I don't see them anymore. They've all disappeared. The Europeans are hiding. They run behind the sort of filing cabinets in Brussels. They're hiding. They don't know what to do about Daddy. Daddy's gone off the reservation. They don't know what to say. So it's brilliant on one level, because this is just another level of hypocrisy that's exposed Israel, it's exposed the United States, and it's exposed the European elite leadership for what they are, which are absolute charlatans. They don't have a moral, ethical bone in their body left anyway. So it's terrible. The whole situation is terrible. Don't get me wrong. It's terrible, but it has exposed everything. And that is, I think, could be a positive in the long run if we survive this crisis.
We're basically in the same sort of stalemate when it comes to Ukraine and Iran, because in both cases, the United States is asking for ceasefire. Even Donald Trump was asking 48 hours of ceasefire. I don't know what does that mean. Even he wanted to find the pilots, or one of the pilots who was
So that's the U.S. was basically begging Iran, without begging publicly, but they're begging Iran foolishly for a 48-hour pause to clean up a mess. That's what it is. We're talking now, 4, maybe 5 aircraft, either shot down or damaged, plus missing U.S. airmen. It's a mess. They needed time. They wanted down tools, and Iran told them to go pound sand, and rightfully so. And so they didn't get it. It's everything the U.S. Trump says at this point forward. If he says, "Oh, I'm giving you a deadline. I'm giving you 5 days. Expect an attack within 24 hours." or he says, no, I'm going to give you till April 29th. We're going to give you 2 weeks, some arbitrary number, 2 weeks. Expect an attack right before that time limit. Probably, days before, or, the weekend before. Expect some kind of a major attack or something by either the US or Israel. So, in other words, all these announcements by the US, or claims or requests, whatever, they're meaningless at this point. They're meaningless. The US is not agreement capable. The US cannot abide by any ceasefire. Even a 24-hour ceasefire, I wouldn't even give them that. They're not worth it. The US have lied and deceived so many times. They've just adopted, if you look at it, what the US have done is they have adopted all of the methods and tactics of the Israelis, basically, which is, just to rampage. I call it rampage foreign policy. Kill, assassinate, bomb, lie, deceive, propagandize, false flags. It's just everything. This is what the U.S. is adopting. So before, the U.S. used to allow Israel to be in the gutter, to do the dirty work in the gutter. And that was Israel's role. And the U.S. would stand above it and pretend to be above that, and pretend to be the rational hegemon. But under Trump has basically taken the United States down in the gutter, down into the gutter with Israel, to do gutter methods, dirty street criminal methods that Israel that's normally Israel's stock and trade, is deception, is lying, is assassinating people, is killing negotiation teams so you don't have anyone to negotiate with, and then disingenuously going to the public like Netanyahu does every time and say, we don't have any partners to negotiate with. We're trying to negotiate with the Palestinians, but nobody will talk to us because you killed them all. So, I mean, but that's normal for Israel. And so now Trump has adopted these tactics. Why? Because Israel is directing U.S. foreign policy, and Israel is providing tasking for the U.S. military. The U.S. is outsourced. The U.S. is nothing more than a glorified mercenary force for the state of Israel and the Israeli lobby. As far as this conflict is concerned, 100%. And probably for big oil and big gas as well. They're always working as a surrogate for BlackRock, for U.S. big oil and gas. That's without a doubt. But in terms of actual tasking and what the U.S.'s position is on any given moment, it's absolutely dictated by a foreign country, through a foreign lobby based in the U.S. that doesn't have to register as a foreign agent, because they've lobbied to make sure that they wouldn't have to register as a foreign agent. And they paid a lot of money for that. It's not hard to figure out at this point. They've given us the PhD crash course here in the last year. And now you can see what their relationship is really like. You don't even need to read John Mearsheimer and Stephen Walt's book, The Israeli Lobby, which I have on my desk here. You don't need to read that. Israel's given everybody a crash course. Trump have given everyone a crash course on how Washington really works and how the Israeli lobby runs Washington. It's all now clear for everybody to see.
I think that's not hidden anymore, because we had General Keane on Fox News at least 2 times. I heard him, Benjamin Netanyahu, telling Donald Trump what to do as time goes by. This is serious when, an analyst on Fox News says that, you just imagine how deep is that, what's going on, and what is Donald Trump, what is his understanding, his strategy in this war without Benjamin Netanyahu. I think it's all defined by Mossad and Benjamin Netanyahu. And many of these military commanders who are leaving the administration or leaving the armies because of what's going on in terms of the Israeli leverage, because nobody's there to hear them. And how do you see, because the way that Pete Hegseth trying to, so he's dominant, he's controlling everything, but we see some sort of chaos from within happening. And I don't know how long Donald Trump can hide that. It's not because of what's going on with Israelis, it's because of the number of casualties. With the Intercept reported, the number of
Mm,
casualties are not reported correctly. They said more than 70%, 90% of Iranian missiles and interceptors, air defense system was destroyed, were destroyed so far, and which was later on a report on CNN, at least CNN is reporting that it was 50%, which is not, by the way, the case. But after all, we see some sort of disagreement when
mm.
it comes to their assessment. It shows how fragile is the assessment, intelligence assessment on their part.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I mean, I'm shocked. In my lifetime, I would never see CNN go against the Pentagon. I mean, that never happened. The CNN always had their embedded correspondent, Barbara Starr, in the Pentagon, and her job was to be a propagandist for the Pentagon and verbatim. Like, so all the wars, at least while she was there, and then before that, Wolf Blitzer and these others, and their job was to repeat Pentagon propaganda and never to veer off the script, because it was for them, it was a national security imperative. So CNN becomes, and the mainstream media are an extension of the government at that point. That they have to abide by that. But this is the first conflict in my adult life that I've seen mainstream media breaking away from the White House, breaking away from the government. And CNN's been, I don't know for how much longer, because my understanding is that Larry Ellison and Israel will take control of that network very soon. But let's just say for now, the leak about the CIA arming the Iranian Kurdish factions over the border in Iraqi Kurdistan to deploy them. Remember that when that was CNN that pushed that out, and they said that's going to be a problem for the Trump administration. Verbatim, that's what they said, and I was surprised. I'm like, what's going on here? Is this some kind of distraction to fool the public? I was like, no, but it looked like that leak was created some damage for that operation. So I think the CIA is split. I think there are veterans within the CIA that do not support this war, don't support this president, and don't respect Pete Hegseth or Trump or any of his advisors for the way that they're carrying on. That's true. In the media, there's a split. We can see that. The hate and aversion of Trump by a lot of mainstream media propagandists that would normally just bite their tongue and go along with it, they're actively working to undermine Trump with the coverage. And I think this is a positive thing, because that's what the press is supposed to do. They're supposed to challenge the government and call truth, hold truth to power, or speak truth to power and hold power accountable. That's that's the whole purpose of the press, if you believe the lore of the United States as a democracy. Okay, and so we're starting to see that now. So they are kind of doing their job, maybe not enough, and sort of not enough to sort of really, I think, pull this war effort down overnight. But they are doing it, and there's all sorts of other clues that are showing that. I mean, the casualty cover up is huge. That's it's interesting, Nima, because our sources told us this last week that the number of casualties are orders of magnitude higher than what was being reported, and that especially deaths are not included on the manifests going back to the United States of wounded. Deaths are being triaged and being managed. So I would say, based on the Intercept report and the other reporting on this, I mean, I know the Iranian news agency says the U.S. dead soldiers in terms of like at U.S. bases that were hit, etc., is in the hundreds. Okay, that's what Iranian news agency is saying. Intercept is saying it's in the dozens potentially. I would say it's probably somewhere in between, most likely. So it's way higher. It's probably upwards, way higher, in multiples higher than what's been admitted, because the political price, Trump could not withstand the pressure even from 100 dead soldiers. He couldn't. He would fold under pressure. He's notoriously weak when challenged, and I think you can see this presidency's fallen back on lying and fake news and propaganda to create this kind of fictional war. What Trump's calling it a perfect war. This is what he's saying. It's the perfect war. Nobody's seen a war like this ever in the history of human warfare. No one's seen anything like this. People tell me how wonderful this war is. They tell me, say, Trump, nobody had the guts to do this. And thank you, Trump. Thank you, Trump, talking about himself in the third person. This is what he's saying. So he can't. There's no way that if the facts start undermining this hugely massive bar that he's set for the expectations for this perfect war, any chink in the armor is just that house of cards is going to come falling down. And I think you start to see the beginnings of that this weekend with all the downed U.S. aircraft. Plus, I think a Chinook got blown up on the tarmac if I'm not mistaken, it was at the Kuwaiti base that was hit. Literally. So, I mean, the U.S. have taken more material losses in terms of drones, aircraft, helicopters, etc., in this war than in this space of time than any other conflict in living memory. And normally, what that means, Nima, is that Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, he gets dragged in front of the Senate and the congressional committees to answer why the U.S. has lost so many billions of dollars. Is this because of bad organization? Is this because you don't know what you're doing? Is this because you're making up your missions as you go along and there's no real strategy to any of this? They haven't been able to, they haven't made them accountable. They managed to bypass Congress by the Israeli lobby helped instruct senators and congressmen to vote against the War Powers Act. So they were obedient to the Israeli lobby. So again, a foreign government has a lobby in the U.S. that's instructing our congressmen and senators to vote against the War Powers Act. Isn't that amazing how that democracy works? So so they're bypassed that. So there's no oversight. We're 5-6 weeks in. There's no oversight for this war. This is an undeclared war of choice, a war of aggression. Zero oversight. They don't have to. The Secretary of Defense or War, whatever the hell his title is, he doesn't have to go in front of anybody. He would melt. He would probably have a tantrum and just probably like storm out of the hearing, rip his tie off, and then go outside and pull his shirt off with all his tattoos and then scream at the cameras. I mean, that's what Pete Hegseth would do. He's so emotionally and psychologically unstable anyway. You can see his outbursts and how he attacks people and attacks the press whenever anybody asks him a difficult question or questions his authority or the president's authority. These people they're paper thin right now in terms of the integrity behind what they're doing politically and militarily. So, I mean, that's what I would expect as an American, at the very least, is this man needs to be dragged in front of a Senate and congressional both hearings to answer for all of these things. And this is just the beginning. Then we're going to have some kind of an inquiry about why this war started to begin with. The only honest assessment I've heard so far, Nima, is from Marco Rubio, who accidentally said that the reason we got into the war is because Israel was going in first. Obviously, this was planned ahead of time, and they were going in. We all know it. But at least the fake excuse that Rubio gave is mostly true, which is that the Israelis went in and we had to go in behind them because we have to abide by the wishes of the state of Israel as a global superpower. We're not the global superpower. We're just a proxy of the real superpower, which politically looks like it's Israel, based on the Secretary of State's admission. I'm just going by his words. It's not my conspiracy theory. I'm taking his words at face value. The Secretary of State, the top diplomat who also claims he's the national security advisor at the same time. Those two jobs are supposed to be done by different people, by the way. The national security advisor should be independent and not political per se. What a mess.
Yeah, it is. I think what Marco Rubio said, it remains in the history of the United States, how Israel, you know, made this chaos. I think it's what is happening in the Middle East is huge, politically, militarily, economically. And, first of all, you see how Iran has destroyed all these American bases in the Arab states, in GCC countries. This is not something, many people are asking themselves in Europe, in other countries, what is the meaning of these, you know, bases if they cannot protect themselves against an attack from Iranians. On the other hand, we know that the escalation is going to the Iranian facilities, civilian facilities. We had the bridge, one of the largest and biggest bridge in the Middle East was hit by the United States and Israel together. And we had pharmaceutical, we had Pasteur Institute, which produces medicine and, for mostly the people with cancer and these sort of specific sort of problems. And the other one, which was mentioned in one of the tweets of Iranian foreign minister, which is so much of concern not for Iran, basically more for the GCC countries, is the attack on the nuclear power
Yep.
plant in Bushehr.
Yep.
It was attacked 4 times. They attacked this nuclear plant, and which he said that radioactive fallout will end life of GCC capitals, not Tehran.
Mm.
They're going to be influenced, and they're facilitating. They're somehow cooperating with the United States. We've seen 2 drones coming from UAE, for example, to Iran to hit the targets. I think that remains, to be responded on the part of Iranians. But after all, their life is on the line right now with these new attacks, with these escalations. And how do you see the way that these Arab states, 2 of them, by the way, we've learned 2 of them were in contact with Iranian officials recently with the case of the Strait of Hormuz, saying the green light, and they saying we're going to pay whatever you want to charge us. We're going to pay that to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. And how do you see the escalation, Patrick? Because Donald Trump said that he's going to hit Iranian, you know, send them back to the Stone Age where they belong. These are heavy sort of words for Iranians, for anybody Iranian, all of the Iranians in Iran and outside of Iran hearing that.
Well, you know, the the Gulf states should pay attention. If these were real leaders, real political leaders, or real rulers, if they were real monarchs for that matter, these are tribesmen that were selected by the British Empire and the British colonial rulers to rule over those artificial emirates. Okay, that's how they got into power. Their family dynasties. It's not based on merit. It's not based on any hereditary royal line or nothing like that. It's just completely fake. Just like the previous monarch dynasty in Iran, the Pahlavi dynasty. It's completely fake. It's imposed by colonial rulers. So they're really just pretending at the end of the day. But if they have an opportunity to actually show that they can rule now by making decisions that are in their interest of their countries and the people that live there and the business investments. And certainly the smart thing to do would to reevaluate their relationship with the United States, who've been using them as a military launching pad for an attack on Iran. And to protect Israel. That's the whole purpose of the U.S. military arrangement, and to protect the petrodollar, which allows the U.S. to spend $2 trillion plus per year over their budget that pays for that military. See, it's circular logic. It's very clear how this relationship works. So if the Gulf states were smart, they would look at this like an existential crisis and think, well, maybe we need to look ahead rather than look back here. And it looks like the relationship with the U.S. and the European countries is not going well. And forget the Abraham Accords. Israel doesn't really care about us anyway. In fact, Israel is planning to take over the UAE. That's the long term plan. Is Israel will end up ousting the royal family anyway in the UAE. They're gone. Probably, I'd give it 10 years. Israeli intelligence have already infiltrated the UAE to such a deep level, and their military, everything to such a deep level. It's only a question of time before they will take over that country because they allowed them in, which was their mistake. Um, but they have a chance to actually normalize relations with Iran through this crisis. They have a perfect excuse to do it. They have a perfect excuse to reevaluate the relationship with the United States. They would be in the right morally, the UAE and the Gulf states and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, but they don't know what to do. Why? Because these are not people that are accountable to the people who live in those countries. They're not even real. If they were real monarchs, they would do what's in the best interest of the people there and of their future line. They're not even doing that, which is very dangerous, actually. But that shows you that they're not really accountable, and which shows you they're not real sovereigns. A real sovereign would do what's in the interest of the next generation to continue their own line. Makes sense, right? I mean, that's what anyone would do. But they're not doing that. So you're not dealing with a normal monarchy here. You're not dealing with a real monarchy. You're dealing with puppet regimes that serve at the pleasure of Western powers and of Israel ultimately. And look, if they want to escalate against Iran, when Trump said in his State of the Union speech on Wednesday night, he said, "Yeah, we've hit the nuclear plants, and there's nuclear dust. There's nuclear dust blowing around. They won't be able to use it again for a long time because of the dust." So Donald Trump has admitted there's radioactive material blowing around Iran's nuclear facilities after U.S. and Israeli attacks on those facilities, which you mentioned, one of them, the Bushehr site. And so seeing that these Arab leaders in the UAE are only 120 miles away, certainly they would pick up on that word by Trump, right? And they would say publicly, we're against this. The United States should not be attacking nuclear sites, and then bragging that there's dust blowing around like Trump has done. That would be, to me, the responsible, more of a leadership move by these Gulf Arab leaders. But they're terrified. They're terrified to say that publicly, to condemn the U.S. or to condemn Trump publicly. They're terrified because they serve at the pleasure of Western powers, and their arrangement is keep your mouth shut, buy our weapons, do what we say, or you're out. The U.S. could have a military coup in the UAE or Saudi Arabia or any of these countries like this. It'll be a military coup. That's how they would oust the regime. It's very, very quick, and it would be over. The U.S. would buy off heads of intelligence and military, and in 72 hours, they would flip the government in all of those Gulf states, one by one. Very easy. Bahrain, no problem. And the royals would be sent packing to their penthouse in Paris, to their penthouse in New York, to their villa in Los Angeles or wherever, San Diego. They have 5 or 6 options, each, where they can go to the south of Spain, to the Côte d'Azur, in Cannes, in south of France, or in the the Amalfi Coast. They have islands. They've bought islands in the Greek islands anyway, Saudis, and so they have. I mean, so they're gone. They're out. It's that easy, and that's probably going to happen. They might voluntarily leave after their desalinization plants get hit. After they continue to escalate against Iran, throwing like a drunk gambler at the craps table, rolling the dice. It's like they're not acting like real leaders. They're not. They're not making rational choices because they are not sovereign. They serve at the pleasure of the U.S., European elites, and of course Israel. all of those Gulf states. They know it. Now we know it. Because if they weren't, they would be absolutely pushing back against everything the U.S. and Israel is doing, but they can't. They're terrified.
Yeah.
It's not going to end well. It's not going to end well for them anyway.
No.
So if they knew the smart thing to do for them is to at least, if you are going to go out with some dignity and integrity. Do what's right for the people under your custodianship, for your dynasty, or maybe if there's a chance you'll have a future heir, if there will be a monarchical regime in charge. But the U.S. can replace them whenever they want. Whenever they want. It's, there's nothing. There's no loyalty between the West and Israel and these Gulf states. They perform a function. They prop up the U.S. dollar. And they're there to buy U.S. weapons and make U.S. defense contractors rich. That is the sole purpose of their existence. And they're only allowed to exist in their form that they are politically, as long as they do those two things: prop up the U.S. dollar, make defense companies in the U.S. and the West rich, and invest money in Western brands and help to inflate the S&P 500. That's what the West want from the Gulf states. If they don't provide that, then they're out. Simple. So, I mean, I hate to sound flippant about it.
That's
But
reality, by the way. I really think the same way. Yeah, I think that's reality. That's the sad reality of the GCC countries, unfortunately.
they've really betrayed, I think, they betrayed the Arab people.
Yeah.
I mean, just by throwing the Palestinians under the bus
Exactly.
for so long over the years. But the fact that they're allowing the U.S. and Israel to militarily attack nuclear power plants just across the Gulf, and the environmental deprivation that will result from that will be against their own future in the Gulf, and they stay silent about this, and they can't summon the courage to censure and to rebuke the U.S. president and the U.S. military and the Israelis for this. This is a level of cowardice that is just hard to comprehend. It really is. It's breathtaking.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Patrick. Great pleasure, as always.
Thank you.
These are not good things to talk about. These are sad things, tragedies. We are talking about war, destruction, death. But after all, we're learning. It's a learning process for us, to avoid that in the future, and in the near future. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Nima.
Thank you.